People here, we need 13 for quorum. We're going to get started because we don't have any action items tonight. But as we've done the last couple of meetings when we've started late, we will make it clear in the conversation and in the notes when we reach quorum so that we can officially start the meeting. And we will record, we will keep a record of all the conversation before we reach quorum as well. We are on our 8th meeting and kind of titled this meeting Reflecting on Community Voices and Beginning to Move Toward Recommendations. Quick logistics, nothing's changed from any of the other meetings, so any questions about logistics we've had them in other meetings. Our agenda tonight is to continue to discuss what we've learned through looking at Student Journeys process and through the community conversations, and I'll pass out again some materials that are summaries of those conversations. There's a continued discussion about the district's practices and strategies related to recruitment and access. And we're joined tonight by Lauren Koehler, who's the head of the Education Placement Center. And she's going to share some data, current year data on enrollment, as well as practices related to how students are informed of their choices, how families are informed of their choices, which is the topic that I know we're all wanting to have some conversation about. As usual, we keep on our agenda continued discussion of anything related to the operational procedures in case you all want to talk about that. And at some point soon, the superintendent's going to be joining and is going to share some of his reflections in the context of that agenda item on how he'd like to see you bring recommendations forward. And I know a number of you have asked the question on multiple occasions, like, well, what does it mean for us to develop a recommendation? What should those recommendations look like? Well, tonight the superintendent's going to give you sort of his perspective on that, and you'll have a chance to talk with him about that. So when he comes in, I'll have him join at the table as well. And then of course we have public comment. So our two essential questions for tonight are how should we continue to prioritize our work, given the key issues that have emerged from the community listening plan and from the Looking to Student Journeys process, and how should we move toward recommendations that align with the district's needs and constraints. And that's some of what the superintendent will talk about when he's here. Any questions about the agenda for tonight? All right. On our roadmap, we're in this sort of period of time that's going to straddle the summer where we are going to move toward looking at some practices from other districts. We're still in conversation about the sort of structure of that, probably outside of some of these meetings, where we create some opportunities for you to get exposure to other districts are doing, whether schools look like, to inform your decision making, and we'll continue to try to use the remaining meetings we have for you to have conversations about one another driving toward recommendations. And we have to finalize those in September, and as we mentioned before, we still have one more meeting that's not calendared because we got rid of the April. We are probably going to calendar that as an all-day meeting in August or September, so you have an extended period of time together to build toward recommendations to be determined. Members of the public, as usual, anytime during the meeting, you can sign up for public comment on items that are on today's agenda or general issues related to the responsibilities of the task force. There are cards over there if you want to leave written comments, which I'll make sure the members of the task force get, or you can sign up to give public comment at the end of the meeting. All right. It's May 4th. Star Wars Day. Happy Star Wars Day for those who celebrate and those who don't, because not everybody does. It's okay too. So I would like you to take a minute, and then we're going to do this as a way of doing whip around introductions around the room. I know you all know each other by now, but it's a good way of keeping attendance. So I want you to think for a minute about which Star Wars character, or if you are not a Star Wars person, what other fictional character do you connect with, or connect to, or identify with the most, and why? Take a minute to think about that, and when someone's ready, go ahead, and then we'll go clockwise from whoever starts.
I'm Karen Chow, and what do we put to introduce, like, just our name?
And maybe who you represent.
Okay. Well, I'm a parent in the school district. I'm also a community college educator in my job. So, yeah, Princess Leia for me, I guess. I like that she was very smart, alecky, and I like her attitude.
Thank you. Clockwise is this way. Jeanette, you want?
Well, my name is La Force, right? So the Force. I'm gonna have to go with Yoda, because lots of wisdom and calm and force for good.
So I am Leanne Boutique, and I am one of the APAC parent leads, and I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but I have a cousin named Liz, so I'll go with
Hi, my name is Holly Mack. I'm the principal at the Academy, and fun fact about me is I've never seen Star Wars.
Do you get that reaction that everybody just said? Right?
Yeah, I do.
So a fictional character?
Of anything.
I don't know, the character, there's that cartoon Mario, the nice.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of my jam.
Right on.
Alright, that's pretty good. I don't know. I think I like the Ewoks because they're really cute. I don't know if that's me or I just enjoy their presence.
And you are Anna.
Oh, sorry, Anna Slafter, the principal here at Independence High School.
Based on Holly's comments, can we repurpose the meeting and watch Star Wars? I don't know if that's.
Become busy for next week.
No, it sounds like
Cute community right there. It's building community.
That's right. That's building. Eric Rice, director of the Mission Bay Hub of the school district, and I'll go with Han Solo because we did Halloween, the four of us, we all dressed up as Star Wars characters one year, and I had the best one. So I did not have the hair, but I had the best. So no, and I think it's a likable character, a complex character.
Carrie Sanchez, teacher at Mission High School. I didn't remember what Ewoks were, but I was like the small furry.
Yes.
version.
Yes,
So
they were very cute.
I think that one, because it's sort of heavily thing, things Care Bear, and
Oh, she did it. I'm Don Woodson with the and I'm within the community. I'm gonna go with Luke Skywalker because when I was young, I never realized that I had any power to do anything. And then as I got older, I started to realize that I do have a number of inner powers to be able to do anything.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Orlando Leon. I'm a parent as well of a kid in 6th grade and also representative of SF Parent Coalition. I would say the character I would pick tonight, maybe a different one another night, is R2-D2 because I think we're all anxious about robots and all those aspects. If you watch Star Wars, tons of robots ever, but they don't take over the world. They're there to help. So I like to be here to help.
I'm Charlie. I'm a sophomore at Lowell, and I guess I go with Darth Vader because I'm the person that's probably willing to shock you a little.
Do you have an interesting backstory?
No, I don't.
That's pretty good.
I think so. I'm Martin. I'm a parent of a 6th grader and a graduating senior. Going to FIT next year. I think I would probably be taking like from the Mandalorian, like the armor, because she's like behind the scenes doing stuff and making people feel safe and doing the best for her community. You know, space Jews. Mandalorian is all about space Jews. So.
All right. And I'm Matt Matt Kelemen, facilitator for this conversation, and I identify most as Chewbacca. Because Chewbacca is always there when you need him, and does the grunt work. Does the work that needs to get done. Tammy.
I rarely participate, but I do want to say that I remember waiting in line for 3 hours.
That's right. Same here.
Summer of '78 to get in to see the Star Wars showing.
And who
Yes.
do you identify?
When I was in high school, I'll say that.
Who do you identify with?
I liked yes. Warm, fuzzy, and always resourceful. Always got your back.
Lauren and Davina, you guys want to weigh in?
Nice Chewbacca.
Hi everyone, I'm Davina Goldwasser, Assistant Superintendent of High Schools, and see, I have 2 middle school boys, so it wouldn't be my choice to be surrounded by Star Wars, but I am. I would say Obi-Wan Kenobi because in my role, a lot about like building capacity of others to be, their vessels.
Hi, I'm Lauren Koehler. I'm the Executive Director at the Educational Placement Center, and I'm really fond of Yoda because he kind of receives quite his sentences in the right order. That's to me.
Very nice. All right, and we'll put Superintendent Wayne on the spot with this question. These are our norms for meeting together. You all have seen them several times. The last meeting, I asked Anna to be a process checker, and then I forgot to ask her because we were running out of time to check in on how we did. So about half an hour ago, I said I might ask her to do that now. So how did we do at the last meeting on our norms?
I think we did pretty well on our norms, and I felt like there was a lot of diversity in who was speaking, so we took space and made space. And we didn't get any closure, so we also accepted our non-closure. I think we did okay.
Great, thank you. I'll do better tonight to ask someone to weigh in at the end. Somebody else besides Anna, because she did last week and this week, volunteer to pay attention to our norms and just give some comments at the end of the meeting about how we did on it tonight. Sure. Eric, thank you. Okay. Han. Okay, Han.
Call everybody by their Star Wars
Everybody on
name.
your Star Wars name.
Wait, can you put them back up?
Tammy and Davina, I'm going to suggest a pivot since Matt isn't here yet, that we jump into the conversation about recruiting and enrollment, and then we come back to these slides about what about the framing Matt was going to do in the update here. Would that be okay?
He says, yeah.
Oh, well then, if these 2 minutes wait, then how about we do your updates first, a couple slides. All right, so let me give some framing real quickly. So what we wanted to do was, now we are trying to begin to really focus. You've had the opportunity through the Looking at Student Journeys process to lift up a number of things that you've said you want to pay attention to. And then in the community listening campaign, I think one big theme that got added to that list was communication about school options, improving information available to families about high school options. So these are things you said we need to pay attention to, and you've begun to do work to articulate what are some strategies aligned to these areas of focus. Superintendent's going to be here in a few minutes to articulate some comments to help kind of give you some guidelines about how you move from these ideas to recommendations. The other big thing that's been going on throughout this whole process is that Davina and her team have been paying close attention to all of your conversations, to all of the work in the Looking at Student Journeys process, and to the community listening work, and have begun acting on what they've been learning. So I'm going to put up the slide, this slide, right, and turn it to Davina for a few minutes, and she can give.
Are we supposed to have any handouts right now?
Really?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so for me, as assistant superintendent and on my team, it has been such a really a luxury to have had, even though it's been a lot of work for everyone in this space, but to be able to have all of this data coming forward and be able to go to the listening sessions and to be able to really read every single school's report. You know, that's something that we haven't done in the high school division to this degree of really that level of reflection. And so to come in and be able to really have all of that as a tool for, you know, my team and to share back with site leaders and to share back with the teams has just been so valuable. So I know how hard it is to make it here and all of that, but I just want you all to know that the work that's being done through this process is super valuable, and the things that have been sort of in the sphere of my control and my team's control, and then from the site leadership side, how site leaders have envisioned what they can control. We can't solve everything, you know, and so we're not going to be able to tackle every single thing that gets identified, but we really are making a lot of headway, and there's a lot of excitement from the ideas that have emerged here. So just some items on here. You're going to have a chance later in the meeting to pour through our high school course matrix, and really the brainchild behind that and all the labor behind that I really owe to Tammy, who has really taken the lead on putting that together. And so that actually came from a lot of the comments that came from a lot of elementary parents, middle school parents, parents in here that have been through the high school experience and have had a lot of, you know, questions and confusion about how do I really understand what all of our high schools offer. And so you'll have a chance to pour through that, and now that will be available every year. There was some version of that in the past, but we're trying to make, you know, really visible what all high schools have to offer and create the best match, so that when families come in, you know, and students are coming in, they really know. So we're not just basing things on like a Facebook post or, you know, a group that has social capital having, you know, what they're communicating about, and we're trying to get information that's more accurate and that really showcases all the amazing things that our high schools are doing. So that's the first thing. The other piece that I heard about is just the stress that families feel going through the enrollment process, and how in the past, you know, the enrollment fair just felt like overwhelmed, and that wasn't enough, and that they didn't feel like they were necessarily getting all of the guidance from their middle school experience, and they wanted a lot more. So we've been working for the past few months in collaboration with EPC to design a very different vision of what we're going to have our own high school fair in October, and we're going to have middle school counselors that actually know where the students are coming from there with us, and we're going to bring community-based partners there. We're going to have some reflective activities. We're going to have ways for families and students to hear about all schools in a much more in-depth way, and really support families and students to, again, find that best match. So they're going to start reflecting on middle school, and then by the time they come to the enrollment fair, the high school one, they will have some idea of what types of schools offer what, and they'll be able to engage with students and parents there in a very different way. So that will be in October, and that is happening. We're really excited, and anybody that wants to work on that with us, who has ideas about that, you can come see me anytime in the meeting, and I'll take your information down, and I'd love to have support on that and have more ideas around the table for that piece. Let's see, we are going to be engaging in, we have a grant through Salesforce where we're going to be able to do like a phase 2 and dive deeper into course access, and look at that and engage specifically with some of our schools that are smaller and help sort of innovate around ways that we can address course access issues when schools are smaller and don't have as many course offerings. So we're going to be doing some retreats. We have money set aside for that to dive into that. And those teams will, you know, also include staff and students and families, kind of in the same way that we had our task force team. It's like a phase 2 of that work. And school level work in process, we have site leaders here that are already putting into practice their learnings, making changes in how they design their counseling team, how they're allocating resources at their school based on a lot of the feedback that came up, and we're supporting site leaders one-on-one to make those decisions. We are doing a lot of work with both our college and career department in curriculum and instruction, and then also there's another component which you learned about last time, where college counseling lives in another department in SFUSD in the district. And so we are really working together to make a much more coherent baseline experience for all students so that every SFUSD student can expect sort of a common experience around college and career and post-secondary guidance. So we're working to do a lot more standardization in that regard and allocate more resources there. And the last one also came up through a lot of great ideas and listening in at tables. We've started some exploration around a different model where, for example, first period, we may be able to have courses that are taught virtually embedded in this regular school day. So for example, if you are a student, at one school, let's say that you go to O'Connell and you want to take Arabic, and Mission has an Arabic class, but we don't have enough staff or resources to have that particular class at every school. We're trying to find a way to look into kind of a consortium of classes that can be offered to all students regardless of what school they go to. And our focus for that is going to be around 18 classes, elective classes, and world language. Because those are the classes that we found based on the data where there's the biggest variance across schools. That's going to take some work. It's a big work stream because we have to work with our labor partners to make sure that the teaching conditions are all in alignment compared to what teachers are teaching when they're not online. We have to do a lot of work around our technology, but that work has already started, and there's a team up and running, and we hope to get some version of that in place. So that's just a little kind of like taster of what's happening, but mostly the takeaway here is that all of the data that's emerging and the conversations and the ideas, they've just been so helpful, and they're already making improvements in our system, and they're going to change, the experience that our students have. So thank you so much for that.
I just want to double down on something that Davina just said, which is, the task force didn't reinvent things in the district. These issues have been around for a while. But I think it's safe to say, based on conversations that we've had offline and that she communicated tonight, that everything on this list is either something that had been thought about and got amplified through the work that you all have done as a task force, or was something that really just emerged as a result of the task force's work. So often we think about these task forces as places where there's one end point, you develop recommendations and see what happens. But as you can see, and we'll create some space for conversation about this, but you can see that things are afoot in the district as a result of the work that you've already done, and that the school teams did in the student journey process. So thank you. All right, I'm going to go back a couple of slides and turn it over to Superintendent Wayne, who's just joined us. And before you talk about the slides we're here to talk about, first you have to answer this question. Because everybody else did. So it is May 4th, and I asked everyone to introduce themselves with their name, their role, and which Star Wars character they most connect with, or if they're not a Star Wars person, there's one person who has seen Star Wars, what fictional character you most connect with. So then you do that, and then I'll turn it to you for the rest of your.
It's a tough question to ask. To think about it. Good evening, everybody. I'll think about it. I don't know.
All right, do it again.
I don't know. Maybe I'll say Luke Skywalker just because I like the lightsaber.
Cool.
All right, and you shared that you talked about the slide.
Briefly.
Okay. No, just so I wanted to come by. So I'm coming from the foster youth recognition. Right? This month is National Foster Youth Month, and we have at any time 250 to 300 foster youth. So it's a chance to recognize those who work with them and some of our foster youth. So and then I'm going to have to go to a parent advisory committee meeting for fun events at this time of year. But I really wanted to come by here as we get into a critical phase of the work. We have the themes that are looking at student journeys. We're learning more about the district. We're getting to where we need to make recommendations. We're looking for you to make recommendations. I wanted to talk about what we're looking for. And we've talked about this is, the board asked me to form a task force for you to make recommendations to me. So whenever I say I'm looking for, no, it is we as a district, as a representative district. But so first, I want to highlight, I think, three kind of maybe principles that should guide the recommendations we're making based off of those themes. And so the first is, I think you've heard we adopted our new goals and our guardrails as part of our work of being more student outcomes focused. So we have our goal of increasing the percentage of SFUSD high school 12th graders who are college and career ready, moving that to 70%. And we just did a analysis and had a workshop with the board where we had to recognize we're significantly off track for that. And there's multiple criteria to meet the college and career readiness goal, including students being able to participate in pathways, in AP courses, like the various topics we've been discussing here. So I think that's one that's important to keep in mind. Secondly, is this task force was in part formed because we have students who have historically been furthest from opportunity and not having the supports and programs they need. And we know, we've looked at our data, we've heard from our students, we know we're not meeting all of their needs, and particularly the needs of our students who have special education needs, or English learners, Black, Latinx, Hispanic, and Pacific Islander. And so, again, that needs to be a driver of the recommendations. And then lastly, this is an important one. As we're making recommendations, what really I'm asking you to keep in mind that our resources, budget, staffing, and facilities, that they're aligned with our goals, and recognizing that we don't have unlimited resources. And as much as we wish we did, that's the reality we face. You see up here, we're facing declining enrollment. You're going to hear data about that. And so there does need to be a sense that as you're developing the recommendations, like what are the trade-offs? Because if we could just do everything, we probably wouldn't need a high school task force and just say, we'll recommend, pathways for everyone, tutoring for everyone, counselors for everyone, but we don't have unlimited resource, we don't have unlimited staffing. And so I think it is important to think, like, what are the trade-offs going to be? And we're not asking you to, make specific recommendations that if this costs X amount of money, here's how you can free up Y amount of money. But that's the district job and administrator's job. But we are asking you to say, like, this is where you should invest your limited money, and it's worth investing it over here, even if it means you can't do this over there. And we're asking a lot from you as a task force, but that's important that that's considered as well. So I wanted to share that, and then just wanted to also say, you're here, and you got selected, you applied to be on this, and we tapped you, just have you applied to be, asked to be on this, and then you're here because we really need concrete recommendations. So, one of my two areas. So, I guess I want to go back here. These are themes. We may not be able to address all of these themes, but also we need to have the recommendations speak to how we're addressing these themes. The recommendations can't just be a restatement of the themes. And so what I mean by that is, like, here's here's two areas that I think are really important that we hone in on with recommendations. So one is ensuring students have fair and equitable access to coursework, programs, and schools. We've heard that a lot from our students as talk about that. This is not a recommendation though. This is a theme, right? This is, and if you present this, then the task force hasn't done what it's been tasked to do, because this doesn't provide us direction on where to go on how to address this theme. But if we say, and these are the things we'll talk about over the next few meetings. Okay, what are ways to ensure student access? What would we recommend? We've talked about the needing to address recruitment in general and our admissions processes, right? Or you're going to learn today about how school capacities are set. And you heard maybe about changing schedules. But then again, that's why I say we also need to talk about how to use our resources. Changing schedules, means it impacts staff and impacts the number of teachers we need. So we'll need to think about that. So this is one key area. And then another key area from the themes that came out that want you to prioritize is ensuring that students can pursue their passions to improve student engagement and access. So then here's the idea, like we have some schools that are wall-to-wall pathways, Are you going to say all schools should be wall-to-wall pathways? Or do we provide those opportunities in using the hub approach? But I just want to push you to be, it needs to be concrete and specific for us to be, and actionable for us to be able to move on it. So now we're going to be talking about what to do and what are the trade-offs, because we can't do everything. So I wanted to both share that guideline and then encourage you to do that and know that that's what it is that we're looking for. So with that, I'll stay for a bit. Oh yeah, we're going to stay this time for the process.
So these three slides, guidance around kind of design principles for recommendations, the area superintendent identified as priorities and what it means to move from a priority to specific recommendations, and the things that are underway. Questions, conversations?
Can you remind us what wall-to-wall means?
Sure, Eric, you want to start?
So we have a set of schools that if you're a student that goes to that school, then by design you will be in a multi-year pathway, typically a career-themed pathway. So John O'Connell will be in one of their pathways. SOTA is really a wall-to-wall pathway school. So you go there, you're going to be in a multi-year pathway.
Yeah. Only 2 schools are like that?
Burton is like that, Balboa.
I brought a handout that
We have a list of all of them?
Here's what I'm going to pass out when we continue this conversation. A list of the CTE offerings, some themes when looking at student journeys process, and some slides we're going to address around enrollment. Maybe I just want to do it all at once. And so
4? Did I hear 4 schools are like that?
I have to go back to my
you'll see on the.
I think it's 4.
Yeah, and that's when if we're defining pathways simply by multiple years of a career themed course, there are other schools that would argue that almost all their students are doing internships. So it may not be a course, quote unquote, that is a set of courses, but they are all by design being at that school having a programmatic element that is similar to that. Oh, sorry.
No, does wall-to-wall mean every kid in the building is in the pathway?
It means every kid, the way we defined it previously was that every student will be in a pathway, whether that is in some cases like at SOTA that starts in 9th grade, you're in that pathway. Other schools like O'Connell, you're in a house first and then you're in a pathway from 11th, a career-themed pathway 11th to 12th grade. Balboa is mostly 11th to 12th, or start going back to 10th. 13th is 10th through 12th. But they have houses in 9th grade. So it's still a multi-year small learning community experience at a place like Berkeley. The other qualitative difference that is can change is in some schools it's a interdisciplinary experience where that pathway is defined by a career theme, but also the English teacher, the social studies teacher, they're all part of it. In other schools, it's defined just by the one course sequence of a pathway that may not be impacting the rest of the student's day.
And then the hub.
The hub is the Mission Bay hub is I would call it a complementary component of that portfolio, where right now it's predominantly serving students who are not in a quote unquote pathway at their school, and so this is their way of centralizing that offering for some of those students. We are, over the long term, we see it also as a potential complement for a student who is in a pathway, and maybe it's their third year of that, they could have the option of specializing in Mission Bay.
So Mission Bay, call it, is students who are going to Mission Bay are also students at other high schools.
Correct.
So they're going to Mission Bay to do some kind of pathway or.
Correct. In health and life sciences and stuff.
And it's more STEM oriented.
Correct.
So, we'll try to multi-part but leading to one question. We're going to get a chance to visit other, I think, schools virtually this week to hear from people and hear what's worked and maybe what hasn't worked. But I recognize that sometimes things are very contextualized, different cities, different bureaucracies, different ways politics and things work. heard this as a concern in the past, that sometimes there's not enough visibility into how we've invested in certain areas and how much actual change that's brought. So tying, let's say, one FTE increase to a percentage point increase in, let's say, the college and career readiness. So if we have that for SFUSD in terms of what we've tried to do, let's say, over the past decade, and how many percentage points that's helped positively, and I think that would be great. And I'm not sure if that data exists. So can you speak a little to that? If we look at some of those concrete steps that I mentioned in one of the previous slides, I'm sure some of that's already been done. So what does a $1 investment mean for the percentage points? Do we have any data?
That's a challenge in education, I'd say, that if people really want to be able to point, to be very clear about like what inputs led to what outputs. And so, and then there's like a standard to actually be able to tie it like that. So, and from the research perspective. So I'll say like, in general, I don't think we have research that says like, if you do this, like when we did this improved, X amount in that area. But we do, this is for the work we're doing, we are trying to be much more focused on, our goals and guardrails work of having progress monitoring and trying to isolate like, okay, here's some things we tried, what was the impact on a student? And maybe not, we're developing, we have some interim measures to see like what's helping. So I don't know if you want to, but that's
I think part of the beauty and challenge of the way, at least in our high school portfolio is that our schools have had, we've had this vision of having a lot of offerings for families and students so that the schools are very unique. And so a challenge around that is that we haven't had as many like unifying programs to be able to study because sites are kind of in not complete silo, but they're kind of working with their context and they're developing what they're doing. And so we're really moving more towards like an instructional coherence model, K-12, where we're using a lot of the same measures and tools and how we look at instruction and common rubrics and common standards. And so we're on a path towards that, and there has been a lot of good that has come from, again, schools having their own unique identities, but it has also been a challenge, I think, in terms of monitoring. So I think for any topic, to hone in on like what it is that you're looking at and then through what measure. And these college and career measures, this is a completely new dashboard that we're just beginning to understand and learn about. So, years ago there was not, you weren't being measured on having CTE classes and pathways and all these AP classes. Like that wasn't how schools was measured. It was on like, standardized test scores or what I call it. So measures have also changed too, which is a challenge. But yeah, we have a desire to move towards. Of course, we want to know if we get a return on our investments. That has not been something that we've been successful at yet, given our context.
And given that, and thank you, I appreciate that. Exactly the research context, I get how we can't just hold something controlled for several years while we measure, and that's not realistic. So it would be great because I know the public, our communities, they are asking for that kind of accountability. So I think wherever we try to recommend, I hope there's a way to measure it along.
Okay, Mike, if we can go back to the slide that had the resources on that. Yeah. So you had mentioned about in the recommendations to think about in terms of the resources when we budget staff and facilities with that. I think my concern when I hear that is, do we have enough information and understanding how much of a budget there is, what is it going towards, the number of staffing per student, the budget of how much money per student, and what does that mean? The facilities, all of those things, to be able to take that into consideration, as opposed to thinking big picture as much as we can, and then you all think about, okay, this is doable, this is doable, this is doable, this is doable. I mean, so
yeah,
because I don't want to limit the way that the thinking and the ingenuity that may come out of the group based off of, well, I don't know if there's enough staff to do that. Well, we don't know.
Well, yeah, I guess I'd say, and then I'd say, the reason why I wanted to bring that up, and what I meant when I said, like, well, kind of the district or administrator's job to say, is more, so yeah, I'm not, that's, I don't know that I'm expecting recommendations, like, you would need to know all that, because that'd be a lot to know. But I do think, I'm gonna just use counselors as an example, right? We've talked about the fact that some schools have more counselors, some schools have less counselors, right? And if we feel like counselors is really important, you know, I assume you're gonna have various recommendations like that. Say, okay, this is going to be, you know, we think this is your top strategy, and so, you know, devote your funding to that. And then these things either are less important, or we understand it might mean you're not going to be able to devote to A, B, and C. I think that's what we're looking for, because then when we need to make the decisions about, you know, both the limited resources, but also like where we could get more resources. Okay, we're going to go for grants for these things. That will be the direction we need. If it's just, if there's no prioritization, or then it's hard. It just feels like, well, we have to figure out how to do everything. We're not going to be able to do that.
But if there was a way of saying, and I'll just use that example.
Yeah.
So if the recommendation is every school should have a college counselor,
Yeah.
right, or a college advisor. So we don't know whether that is affordable or not.
Yeah.
Like we don't have the budget to say we can't do that.
Yeah.
So if that is a recommendation that we made, I would caution that, just in the sense that we would be like, well, I don't know if we can do that. So take that off the table, and then try something else. When that potentially could be a great idea, and you all then determine and say, you know, we actually can do that because we can find money, as you mentioned, to be able to do that. But because we're hesitant on that and making that recommendation because we're looking at it from that frame, then we would have taken that off the table, which is something that could potentially do. So that's where to me that just in terms of being cautious of looking at that, because we don't have the information, and I would want to think that we should shoot for the sky, you know, you know, as much as possible.
And Matt, I mean, and this is a good conversation, and Matt might have it all planned out. You know, that's his job. So this is helpful as we think about, because we're getting, like, our next meeting, you know, we're going to start talking about things. Lauren maybe had a,
if you guys were able to make your recommendations or come up with this sooner, then potentially some of our summer staff could go through and like assign a cost to each of the things so that you guys can prioritize that way.
If we could provide a sense of scale, 7-period day instead of 6-period day. That sounds like a good idea. Is that really cost? But we can provide a sense of scale.
We should provide that faster, yeah.
But then that also
Because I can tell you right now, in Galileo, we take 5 additional teachers, uplifters, but that's at a minimum.
Yeah.
Like one of your, and you just put it as like an example, I guess, for the 7th-period thing, but when you do the high school level, a lot of the students and even some of the presenters were asking about that. And so I was wondering if we were to suggest that, is that something that you've already considered, or would that cause pushback from the unions because of the collective bargaining agreements that are already in place?
That's a great question. Because it's definitely been talked about at school, then we would need to go through a process to implement. Probably anything that's recommended. Even like when we're saying counselors at school, those kind of things, there's some
I'd say
negotiable impact.
there's high interest from both, from our teachers and staff, as well as site leaders around exploration of that 7-period day, which comes a lot around like students pursuing their passions and more offerings. So I feel like that's one where I see a lot of unity amongst both like site leadership and teachers.
I'm wondering if, we haven't gotten like feedback directly from the high school administrator, like the principal and the teacher, right?
They're part of the working student journeys process. So they've been served, the staff.
Well, what I'm saying is, you know, we cannot possibly know what's going on in a school, right? And you may not even know, right, from where you are, if you're on the middle level, right? But I'm wondering, can we survey our administrators at each school and the teachers and staff to ask them what they think have been the most impactful use of the resources, say, in the last 5 years, right? Like, I think if we have that kind of feedback, like, there was some investment in some resource, whether it was adding to something or starting something new, that they felt like, yeah, this is really, we're seeing some significant output, you know, outcome from this. Like, I think that would be kind of cool for us to know, right?
It's pretty subjective as someone leading a school setting.
Yeah.
Like, people are invested in what they're working on, and it's often hard for them to understand the bigger picture of a school system, you know, why some things cost this much and some things cost that much, and how many, you know, because a lot of educators are sort of, they have their purview and their students and their program, and that's the center of their world, sort of.
Right.
So I feel
But
like
for you as an
oftentimes-
administrator, though, would you have a better view from your point of view as an administrator in terms of like looking at the impact of students overall in your school? What, like, what is the counseling? So that really, right, makes an impact in raising some percentage of students.
I mean, that's easy to talk about, because that, we have to look at that data every day, and then every year make a big decision
So if
about.
we could get that, that would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, just look at our budgets and see what we're, you know.
But I think the issue too, though, is that we wouldn't know how you're allocating your budget. So if, so if she, you had mentioned, oh, we can give you a breakdown of what that looks like. But if we don't know, for example, district-wide, okay, it's gonna take $5 million to house, to put a counselor at every school. Okay, that's great, but, and the overall budget for the school district is X. Yeah, but we don't know how much actually goes towards counseling to begin with. Or we don't know what that, for on our end and our space, we wouldn't know how that is associated with, as in a sense, the outcomes of what that would be, right? We just wouldn't have an idea of that. And so again, I think, while I understand why that's there, I completely understand why that's there, because you can't say, oh, make sure that as you mentioned, there are things that are just not possible in that way. But I think it is, I think just if we're looking at things in a logical way, and in a way that says, what is the potential of things being doable, right? I would just not want to be limited in terms of thinking about things that we literally don't know enough about to take it off the table.
Before we take a couple more comments, I do want to just name in terms of getting feedback from administrators. A little bit different from looking at the individual school plans and budgets. The information from the Looking at Student Journeys process and the March 11th experience, which many of you participated in, all those materials are up on our website, did include a process of every school team identifying what should change in the system. Right? So I would point you back to those. Right? Like, those are the data, and Holly and Anna as school administrators, Ambar as administrators, you can tell me if you think that's right or not, but that's the work that schools did to say back to the task force, here's what we do. Martin, and then Eric.
I was thinking, this is the idea that my boss brings up all the time, is moonshots, right? If we didn't think we could get to the moon, we would never have got there. How do we look at this and say, kind of put a bar across that and think, how do we get from here to where we want our schools to be? We have to think that way. We can't just say, I know that's hard, not think within a budget, but we can come up with some great ideas, but if we leave things off the table, then they're not gonna, then you're not gonna see them, and you're not gonna go, wait, we could do this in this way, and it would have an action that would help all the schools. So that's kind of my thought. I always think about, the first person who does it, people look up like I'm crazy. And then you have to have a second person who gets involved, or a third, and then you have a movement. So this is kind of my thought.
Yeah, Mike, thank you so much for that comment. I think this is a time for us to be creative and bold, and shoot for the stars, or whatever metaphor we want to use. And I think we should not assume that any of those ideas necessarily that everything costs more, right? So I'll give you an example. So an example of if you were to put, I have a bias toward interdisciplinary teaching, right? And so if you were to put that social studies teacher and English teacher with back-to-back periods, okay, they're teaching those sections anyway, and those two classes are like flipping between first and second period. All of a sudden, you've got a 2-period block with 2 teachers, 1 group of students that they share. It's the same cost. Now, the cost might be professional development, capacity building, things like that for those 2 teachers. But they got to teach those 2 sections regardless. You're just putting them in the master schedule in a way where they have the opportunity to do some things together for 2 hours instead of 1 hour, and with disconnected curriculum. I'm not saying that's what we should do across the board, but that's like an example of a cost-neutral move, but could create deeper learning, could create opportunities for specialization, following student passions.
Okay. So we'll be continuing this conversation. We're going to do an activity a little bit later tonight after the presentation where we ask you to think about certain sources of data through these lenses, right? Through the lenses of are the strategies going to help us increase the percentage of high school 12th graders or college and career ready? Are we focused on students who have been historically furthest from opportunity? And are we thinking thoughtfully about resources? But on this last one, what I'm hearing strongly from the task force is to not go quickly to being limited by resources. Think big, think boldly about strategies, and then understand that there are going to be down the line in our process. We're going to need to make trade-offs among the ideas.
Yeah, if I just reflecting on your conversation and how you heard me say it, I guess I would to continue with the metaphor you used. Yeah, the last bullet point isn't don't plan for the moonshot, but tell us, is hydrogen the most important fuel to use, or is this the angle that the wings need to be? I'm not good with this metaphor, but but without some direction and just say, that's where and that was on that slide where I had that's the difference to me between a theme, give access to all, and you can do it by providing everything to a recommendation, and that's the distinction I'm trying to make.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to go into.
Thank you.
Process check, everyone. 2 things. Those of you who arrived late or already ate lunch, feel free to get more food. Members of the public, there is enough food if you want to have dinner. Feel free to move quietly by and grab that. At about 6:10, we reach quorum. I'll note that for the minutes for the meeting. So we are at quorum for the meeting. And now we are going to move on to Lauren, who already introduced herself, head of the Education Placement Center, is going to whip through a bunch of slides and share some data with you related to recruitment and enrollment. And then we'll have a process of having some clarifying questions, and then an activity we want you to do related to some key data that she's going to share, and some of the data that we're working with, some of the information in the course.
Thank you. So I'm really excited to be here because recruitment and outreach are my team's priorities, and I'm hearing that you guys are really excited to keep doing those things. I'm hoping that your questions will help us think about some new things to do. So the first question that I heard that I was asked to bring answers to is, what types of outreach are you doing to make sure that kiddos and families know about all of their high school options? There's 4 basic categories of things, and I'll go through some examples of them. One thing we do is helping families learn about their school options. We also help families understand the general application process. You guys know it can seem long and confusing and stressful for families, so trying to demystify that is one of the things we do. And then helping families understand the admissions process for our selected high schools is another aspect of our outreach. Right, so we do several things to help families learn about school options. One is the enrollment fair. As Davina mentioned, next year we'll be doing a tailored fair for high schools only, so that we're able to do a lot more content and knowledge building about high schools. We also tried out this past year an introduction to high school opening session. so that families sort of see a lot about the different high schools in the portfolio before diving into listening to individual schools' presentations. We also have a school finder, which is searchable by every school, by grade, by arts programs, by sports, by language programs. So you can go in and put in what grade your child is, your home address. It'll tell you the high schools in order of distance from your home. And this is really helpful for a lot of families to sort of say like, oh, it really matters to me that my school be close, or it really matters to me that my school have Mandarin. And so you can search those types of things on this website. We're open to adding career and technical pathways or other things if you guys have other suggestions. This past year, we did a unified school tour sign up for the first time to make it easier for families to go on tours of schools, because we know that when families go to the school and they visit and they see what's going on there, then they get really excited about it. Families who go on tours are much more likely to accept the school when we assign families to it. We had 10,000 families sign up for school tours this last year, and we chose all of the high schools. So next year, all of our schools will be on here and everybody will be using the school tour sign up. Last thing is, we want to make sure that families are learning about high school options that they might not otherwise consider. And so we've been doing a really large communications campaign to highlight our less requested schools. So it's on social media, in buses, in print. We're focusing on diverse students from less requested high schools. You can see all of these student stories at sfusd.edu/success. But this first one is Jasmine. She went to O'Connell, now she's at Stanford. Her pictures at the EPC. We have like dozens of kiddos in the EPC if you want to come see them. This is, a high school senior from Mission. I can't remember his name, but this is the 44 bus. And then this is Agnes, also from Mission, I think, in the St. Town newspaper. So we're working really hard to make sure that families see all of these options. And there's like videos of the students speaking and more information about them and their stories and their post-secondary journeys on our website. Alrighty, helping families understand the general application process. So we do more than 70 workshops for about 2,000 families last year. This is in addition to the enrollment fair, so we're talking to about 8,000 people of the 15,000 people who will apply. We had 11 of them this past year at middle schools or K-8 schools for 8th graders about their high school options. We work a lot with community organizations. I see Vanessa's here from Friends for Local Schools. And then we work really hard to prioritize our less requested schools and do workshops to promote those particular schools. We do a lot of in-person and virtual enrollment counseling. We talk to about 14,000 people on the phone or in person every year. And then we do a lot of reminders by text and email and paper letters to families, reminding them about workshops, events, resources, all of the deadlines. We text you like a week before the deadline. If you are a parent in SFUSD and you have a child who's transitioning grades, you've probably been harassed, I will say, by the EPC team.
I was.
Sorry. But you knew what you were supposed to do.
I did.
And you knew about the resources.
I did.
So that's why we do that. And then the last bit here is helping families understand the admissions process for selective schools. So we do workshops at the enrollment fair. We do one on Lowell. We do outreach to eligible students. We send letters to all of the kiddos who are eligible for these selective high schools. I think we're reflecting on some different ways of doing that. It's a thing that we've done for many years, and we're open to changing. We do a workshop with local families. So we reach out to all the high schools. We figure out middle schools. We figure out African American, Latinx, Pacific Islander, homeless foster students who are eligible for our selective high schools, and we do a workshop for them at Everett Middle School in Spanish and English. And then we have some detailed enrollment information on our website. I know this is like a really fast tour of all of the things we do for recruitment. Feel free to ask me questions. But I'm going to talk a little bit about high school enrollment patterns, because I know that this is a topic of lots of interest.
And I'm going to hand out these next 4 slides.
Perfect, thank you. So, yes,
Can I ask a question
of
about
course.
school visits? So, I decided to try, I have a good husband, he's in 7th grade this year, and I decided to try to do some tours, because I thought, well, let's try to see some schools earlier. I was not able to get a tour to Lowell or to Balboa, I think it said. They just filled up so quickly. And so I don't know if that's something that can be worked on, like have more tours available, or maybe virtual tours or something to be able to have more families
clarifying bits about what we do to help families understand high schools in the process. So I'm going to show you guys a bunch of data, but let's frame it all in this sort of trend. Enrollment in high school has been declining for several years, and this is primarily general education. So right now there are more than 300 open seats in 9th grade general education in SFUSD high schools. What that means is that, you know, there might be spaces for 90 students in a high school freshman class, but only 60 students are enrolled. And so across the district, we see 300 of those openings across our high schools, just in 9th grade, just in general ed. So what does that mean? We're going to specifically look in just a second at the #1 ranked applications, because more than a third of 9th grade students assigned to a school that they ranked lower than #2 on their list do not come to SFUSD at all. So if you don't get your #1 school, more than a third of families are just saying like, no, I actually don't want to go to SFUSD, I will choose another option. So that's why we look at that specifically. Also, because we have 300 open seats, we have the facility capacity, the space in our buildings, to accommodate a lot more students at our highly requested schools where there are more #1 choices. However, we limit assignments to a lot of our larger, comprehensive, highly requested schools so that we're able to assign students to all of the schools. So we would not have enough students to fill up all of our smaller, less requested schools if we just assigned full capacity at our larger schools. So we limit those larger schools' capacity. Okay. So there are a lot of numbers here. I'm going to walk through just Asawa and the top line so that you understand what all of these are, and then I'll give you guys a few minutes to look through all of the numbers. So total applications, this is for next year, 23-24. 648 applications for Ruth Asawa, and 355 of those applications ranked Ruth Asawa as their first choice. So this is their most preferred school. We assigned 165 students in round 1. I think we'll probably assign an additional 40 in round 2. And so this data, first 3 columns for 23-24, the yield is the number of students we assigned, the number of them that are currently enrolled. So we have 148 kiddos currently enrolled in 9th grade GE at Ruth Asawa. That's 90% of the kiddos that we assigned at this time last year.
Does
And-
it,
Yeah, go ahead.
is that the number of kids who've accepted their placement?
No, so this is for last year. So the kids that we assigned this time last year, 148 of them are currently enrolled. So 90% of the kids we assigned last year are enrolled now.
Just to be clear, because I thought I was mentally processing 23-24 applications. So you assigned it for 23-24
Yeah,
for this school
165.
year, 165. Last year, that's how many enrolled of what would have been in this column. So it's not exactly the same number in this column.
And we don't know when they decline.
That's right. Some students decline immediately after round 1. Other students wait until August 15th to tell us that they won't be coming.
And so you're saying that 90% of the students actually attended the school that you assigned to that school?
For Ruth Asawa, yes. 90% of the kiddos that we assigned last year are there right now.
You can calculate last year's students assigned by multiplying it by factor.
You can divide by 0.9 and you'll get the total number.
Definitely.
So, for Lowell,
Yeah.
so right now, 885 are assigned.
Right here.
Currently enrolled is 635. Does that mean you accepted more students enrolled this year?
Yes, it does. So there's a little star here because the 22-23 data is based on the lottery process. When we do the selective admissions process, we over-enroll at Lowell by about 300 kiddos because the acceptance rate in the selective admissions process is 70% for Lowell. So we know that like 30% of the kids that we assign to Lowell in the selective admissions process are going to go to private school. And so they do not end up enrolled there. So we have to over-assign by quite a lot.
Sorry,
Yes.
if it said 98% last year
Yeah.
accepted, why is there this assumption from 70%? I'm sorry.
So when we do it by lottery, when it is random or according of kids enroll in the school. When we do it using the selective admissions process, which is what we're doing this year, only 70%.
And that's based on 2021 data?
Which the 70%? It's based on historical data from all of the years that we did the lottery report.
Thank you.
It was true when I ran the Lowell admissions process in 2005 and 2004.
Yeah.
It's a long historical process of you need to have 800, 900 offerings because of the number of people who say no.
Yes.
Just on, based off of the last slide, you have to turn to it, but you had mentioned that if a person does not get, if someone does not get their first or second choice,
Yes.
that they leave, correct? That they go to another district or they go somewhere else, correct?
Yeah, a third if they don't get their first
A
choice.
third if they don't get their first choice. Has anyone ever investigated why?
Sure, there's lots of reasons. We actually work with some researchers from UC Davis who have been asking families those questions, but families have a wide range of preferences, but the things that they really care about are like excellent instruction, the school feels welcoming to my family, things along that line.
So I think why I asked that second question is, if you look then at what number 3, 4, and 5 are in terms of their choice, then if if you're saying, 50% is 3 is this school, and there's a percentage in this school, then maybe there's a way to address some of those issues that they have with some of those schools, or maybe seeing an overall theme that's being determined, why people are actually not.
But, I mean, a lot of the, private school families just throw their hat in with close to zero intention, but that's messing up the numbers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So to that
that's
point,
true too.
we get about 4,500 applications for ninth grade every year. We only enrolled 3,900 ninth graders. So there's 600 families, that's like, I don't know what percentage that is, but it's a big old percent that have no intention of applying.
Yes, oh, sorry.
You want me to?
I'm sorry.
So, I just had a question, based on that. It seems like this will be consistent across all districts, right? And so, I think what it is when you have such a large number of ninth graders that are applying versus are enrolling, is they're using, for lack of a better phrase, SFUSD as the safety net, right? So just in case I don't get into the private school that I want to make sure that I have a placement, in what would be my technically second choice at the district, but it still has to be my top choice overall, because then we're not even looking at the fact that there's charter schools too, right? So if you can't get in a private school for whatever reason, and you don't get your top school in the district, then you can always go charter, since there's so many charter school options as well. So it seems like that isn't just the SFUSD problem. That's going to be consistent across all districts, that have a large offering of private schools and charter schools. Would that be right?
Yes, although San Francisco has the highest percentage of students in private and charter school of almost any American state.
I was going to say that.
One other thing that we look at besides just, so one is when Lauren was saying about, when we investigate that and why, we didn't get your first choice. Some of that and why we're working on those campaigns and with this majors model for other things is also about lack of understanding about what is offered, and so changing, broadening the information and perspective, and our theory of action is if people have more awareness about what's happening at our schools, that they won't just base it on maybe where, a cousin went, or perception or something like that. The other big data point that we look at that's back on her other chart is retention rate. So once we get the students in that school, whether it was their first choice or not, can we, can we be a great match for them regardless of what they originally maybe thought? And so that's another data point that's really important to us, is that retention.
Go to Karen and then I'll- I'm sorry.
Also I'm wondering about the families who leave. Do we have data on the ethnic breakout of those families also, and whether they're the ELL, whether they're coming from the more vulnerable or less successful communities?
We have this information because of the researchers we work with. They have just finished presenting their findings. I can share a copy with you to share with this group. But it's more affluent families are the ones who tend to leave. So families with greater resources.
Yes, sorry.
Is it that?
Because they have to
Oh,
choose.
Yeah.
I want to jump in on that one.
Serve English learners.
Right.
Or kids with IEPs, really.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
complex IEPs.
And do we know of this 33%? I have my assumptions. Is it Lowell and Soda that is predominantly what was the number one pick, but didn't get a placement and therefore they're leaving? Like,
But
there's a
those
small
are good
subset.
backup schools.
But I'm asking,
Well,
is that
that's-
confirmed in the data? That's my assumption. Is that confirmed that of the 33% that didn't get their number one, as in, as opposed to a different school that was, Lincoln or Balboa that are also heavily.
That's a good question. We can look that up. Lincoln is actually the school that gets the most applications, so I think Lincoln is one of those. Yes.
I just want to say that to your point, I think this is where the marketing thing comes in handy because frankly, I wonder if folks are saying, Lowell or Soda is my number one, but I wonder if they even know what it is based on anything beyond perception, right? And or how are they deciding if the other schools are not? Because frankly, have you set foot in every other high school to be able to say, well, if I don't get into Lowell, that's it, I'm leaving one of the private school. I wonder about that, right? Because perception, it feels to me, matters a lot when folks are making choices about these high schools that are not based on what
Family's actual number one data source is other families.
Yeah.
Word of mouth.
Again,
Yeah.
your peers often
Could be like an echo
can
chamber.
be an echo chamber, right? So, which is why there are peers. So they're gonna confirm what you feel like is already true, whether it's based on fact or not. And so that puts a lot of schools at a disadvantage.
So, process point, and Charlie asked one question, and then, are you able to stay a little bit longer? Okay, so what we're gonna do is, Charlie, you ask your question, and then Lauren will be around, so as we're doing the work of the next activity, I'll ask her to float, and if people have additional questions they want to hear from her, feel free to pull her over.
Can I just make one quick thing? I just feel like it's important to say, like, all of our kids get the same diploma. They do. And all of our teachers often have the same credential, whether, no matter what the name of the high school is. And so I wonder sometimes about dispelling something that makes it feel as if you're getting, I don't know what the promise is, right? But just feel like it's about marketing and fact-based decisions.
Yeah.
I kind of want to add on to the idea that other than just word of mouth, one of the main ways families can often go in the perspective of other schools are often social media, especially in a certain age. And also one of the main ways is also newspapers or TV. And also I kind of want to know what is the basis, how much percentage is still based on not just word of mouth, but also from other sources such as social media, TV, radio, and so forth.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Lauren, that was really, really helpful. And thank you for being willing to stay and share your thoughts and respond to questions. Okay, so based on that, so can everybody hold up the course matrix that I handed out? You got a copy of the course matrix, right? Okay, and you also got a copy of the data that was just shared around enrollment, the last 4 slides that Lauren shared. You also you're going to get another copy of what we handed out last week, which is the ideas that have surfaced from looking at the student journeys process. And they have some copies, I think I have enough for everyone, of the community listening session. But I really so these are more for kind of background, but focusing particularly on the course matrix and focusing on the data that was just shared. I want you to think about what are the patterns that you observe from these data sources about student access to coursework and programs of their choosing. Okay, so when you look across the courses that are offered, you look across these enrollment patterns that were just shared, what patterns are you observing from these data sources about student access to coursework and programs that they're choosing, and what strategies then, from your perspective, would have the biggest impact on increasing student access to coursework and programs that they're choosing. Right? So we want to move using the superintendent's guidance of how we could begin to move from ideas to recommendations. There's some important patterns that are in these data around student access. We want to surface those and say, what do we want to do with that? But while that's being handed out, Annie, is there anything that you want to say about the course matrix beyond what's already been said? Any details for people around what's in there, or you feel like?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward, but I can answer any questions as you look at it, yeah.
Well, I think it's incredibly helpful. I think the matrix is going to be a big game changer in terms of what families feel about the school, because all this stuff used to be hidden behind the wall. And it's just like, what other people have said, you would only know this if you had friends who attended these schools, right? So I'm wondering, and I know this may be a big ask, and this may be part of the whole resources issue, but can the matrix be kind of like an interactive document? Meaning, could it be put on the site in such a way that if families are starting to do their research about school now, so could there be a way for families to say, maybe I look at this and I go, oh, I was never considering Berkeley, but they have this course that I'm kind of intrigued about. Could the matrix be set up in such a way that it's kind of an online interaction thing where a family can click on a button and say, I'm interested in this course?
We can add that to our school binder.
Oh, that's going to happen?
We haven't discussed it, but we can try to add it.
Because I think that would be good data to use preparing for the high school orientation stuff.
All right.
For the fall. If you know a bunch of families really want to know about this one particular pathway at a particular school, then you could prepare, if you work with teaching on that pathway, maybe they can do a little video of what's happening in the class to show, a little, TikTok type thing.
So some way to optimize when that document is resourced to give us information.
Yeah.
Google Docs.
I think it would be so helpful for families to be able to see that, and plus to be able to showcase your lesson of the school that way, because the actual faces and the actual activities of what these kids are doing, that might actually be good.
And just, to jump on with that is, if you go by a car, you can go ahead and do a comparison.
Yeah.
And you'll see
And
exactly
yeah,
what this model does this model is this, and this model is this. So,
Yeah, there's a college app that we're out now to college.
yes.
Yeah, we're looking into, we did an app for this.
No, I look at this, I'm like, oh, that'd be great.
You guys understand the point, right?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. I really want to get to that. I know folks want to sort of ask questions, but I really want you to dig into this a little bit. So, in 2s or 3s, stare at the course matrix, stare at the data around enrollment, and identify what are the things that are most important, what are the things that are emerging as patterns in these data that really need to be addressed. That's in terms of student access to coursework and programs. Think about.
And I want to add something here. All of us looked at the data, right, from the analysis of transcripts, and we saw different patterns of what the students were taking and passing, right? And that's directly related to what is offered. So it may really impact the student experience.
Thank you. surface some ideas. So what are the patterns? What are the things that are in these data that you feel like that you observe, particularly related to student access to coursework and programs of their choosing? So looking across these data sets, what are you observing? Go ahead, Frank.
I noticed that there's equal openings that offered at a majority school except one. So for instance, U.S. history and world history are offered at pretty much all schools except for Jordan. And also,
the European literature is not offered at International, or Marshall, it's offered at every school.
I mean, you can't help but notice, why is it that Lowell has all these languages? So many more compared to all the other languages.
Seymour, please stop.
We noticed that a lot of these courses we didn't even know existed. And we also, one of them noticed that Burton only provides French 3, not French 1 or 2. I wonder. Maybe that's a type.
Yeah. This is this year's offerings, right? So maybe it's this year they're offering it, and next year they're offering did not offer it.
Yeah, so it was for everything that was offered this year, and then they could add potentially what's next year. So sometimes they got one teacher.
So I was just telling Davina, because I went on the tour of Washington, right, which is my neighborhood school. And Washington, I initially had a little bit of hesitation about Washington because I know it's so big, right? I felt like my son, you feel like you don't want your kid to be lost as a number, gigantic school, right? But I think one thing that I really enjoyed about the tour is at one point this principal of Washington, I can't remember his name, I remember he's from Boston. Anyway, he said, if students here want an AP class and we do not provide it, we will do everything we can to create the course. So I was telling Davina, I was like, do all principals have this power? Can they just...
If you have the money and the...
Or no, it was kind of an interesting comment he made, that he made it sound like he actually can follow through. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, that these schools can be malleable and can meet the demand of the students who are there, then speaking to your thing about the image of schools, right? That maybe SFUSD high schools are a lot more malleable than many parents think.
Every choice like that, though, there's a give and take. And I want them to lead.
Right, and you need enough kids to fill the class, and the teacher credentialed and trained the teacher. And the will to teach.
Right.
And you have more funds to play with that when you go to larger school.
So just drawing a strength on this in terms of offering AP classes.
Yeah.
There's variation in data around about how many classes are offered, AP classes are offered, and where they're offered. And as Davina mentioned earlier in the evening, there's effort now trying to think about whether some of those courses can be offered cross school, right? So that we can break down. Is that just out of curiosity, is that a worthwhile, what do you all think about that?
So I think that needs to be highlighted because she was just sharing with us, for instance, from students from her school, if they want to take the autonomous class that's offered at Washington, it's only offered at Wash, there's actually a busing option. And I don't think a lot of families know about that at all. And I think if families knew that there was that way to, I don't even know what you call it, cross-pollinate or whatever, with the schools, right, then I think they would be more willing to accept the different placement, knowing that they could get the regular GE stuff at their school placement, but still get the access to the specific pathway that they want to at a different school without actually having to be enrolled at that school.
I guess I'm wondering about persistence data because I'm seeing a lot of AP, but less of accelerated rigorous courses like IB, theory of knowledge, dual enrollment. I don't know. Some of these may be dual enrollment and may not be identified. So I'm just wondering, how are we identifying rigor and how are we using persistence to help us build our course catalog?
Davina or Tammy or Lauren, do you want to weigh in on that?
I think, well, I can say one thing, like, that just sort of surfaced as I did build this thing. I mean, I knew how it would come out, but one of the things I recognized was around differentiation of leveling courses and mastery, and maybe that's a little bit what you're talking about. So if the school offers fewer courses, students may not have the same opportunity for mastery. So if you have to TAR 1, but you can only have to TAR 1, but you can't have to TAR 1, 2, and 3. Or the same with language, or you can have Spanish 1, 2, and 3, but you don't have native speakers 1, 2, and 3. So it may limit the draw of students to your school, but it also may limit the opportunity for a deep dive into a particular subject area.
And it also may limit, or rather put that student has to do even more to be accepted into specific universities. Because they're going to need to fill those things in other areas and not specifically
I guess, well, so just to piggyback on, thank you for that explanation. I think when you look at the post-secondary data, right, if we look at post-secondary data from our 12th grade, 13th into other institutions, and then we go even a step further and we look at longitudinal data, we are not seeing that the AP courses are the persisters. We are not seeing that. We across the country and in California, we're seeing that dual enrollment and IB type of courses are the persisters. So I'm interested in understanding the investment in AP specifically in the course catalog. And I don't want to politicize the conversation, but I was asked to look at patterns, and that's what I did. And just trying to understand, you know, it just seems like an overinvestment. In some cases, the smaller schools or the schools that may be less, you know, desirable don't even have AP courses. So yeah, I just don't understand that as well.
Can I just say one thing? That sort of gets to the transcript reviews that the school teams did during the looking at student journeys, and one of the lenses, I can't remember what he called it, but the courses that predict student success towards college success. And so we do have some numbers around our schools. And, you know, what percentage of students are selecting the courses that sort of predict their college success. And we could get that to you because we did that analysis. We were looking at student journeys.
Yeah, it's in the appendix, just to sort of name it, it's in the appendix of the Student Journeys preliminary report, and I'll flag it by email to you. There are a couple of slides on academic intensity. So we know school by school, in addition to these data, what are the course taking patterns within the schools, what are the percentages of students that are taking the number of courses that would predict that they will succeed, go on to and succeed in post-secondary.
Right, but that's what's offered. So if theory of knowledge is not, if, you know, for example, in IB, there's theory of knowledge, which you know that. If theory of knowledge is even not offered, kids are not going to take it, right?
Exactly.
So I'm just wondering about what is actually offered within the accelerated realm, you know, IB or DE. Maybe the principals know, I don't know.
Well, the presentation from our last meeting, we have over, I think it was 1,000 kids in high school dually enrolled at CCSF this year. And I mean, like, I believe that's a better alternative than AP. I think, like, AP is sort of a money racket. It's teaching towards a test. And it can, you know, create the conditions for, like, some interesting learning, but it's not, like, centered around student need. It's more, you know, the real, like, it's rigorous, meaning it's well-defined, and you can't really go outside that based on what students need. Unfortunately, our college partnership, you know, CCSF have been very challenging to work with. And I am the child of a longtime CCSF instructor, and I have a lot of love for the institution, but, you know, it's hard. The kids get lost trying to sign up. They get dropped if they miss a class. Like, it's been very challenging to, like, create that healthy partnership.
Can I just make one quick point? I just think that, increasingly families ask me about dual enrollment and less so about AP. And I taught AP for 10 years in SFUSD. And so I think in the spirit of transparency, it could be interesting to have the dual enrollment programs listed on the matrix in some way.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, on the university side, we see definitely more value in dual enrollment.
Yeah.
And that's been increasing over the years.
Yeah.
And I work with the University of California, and that's something that we have been, as an institution, been very, very big on the students in dual enrollment. So I do agree 100%. I do think that there needs to be, I think more information and stuff that's out there. And I guess you could say definitions so that parents understand what dual enrollment actually means, right? And what's the value of dual enrollment.
So it sounds like there's a lot of energy around that idea. I want to pursue that a little further and bring that back. I do want to highlight Anna's point that it's not easy. Like for just to say, oh, we want to do more dual enrollment, that is a cross-institutional.
Can I jump in on that?
Sure.
Because the statewide conversation that I'm hearing there's going to be more investment in dual enrollment. There's going to be more investment in dual enrollment from the community college level, and there's going to be, I think, a bigger push from the legislature because honestly, what people see is that with the AP, right? Your point about AP, you have to score a 4 or 5 in order to earn the credit. Dual enrollment, you take the class, you finish the class, you do the assignment, you will earn the credit. So in that sense, the dual enrollment is a more sure investment in getting the college credit because you're not having to pass this other exam, at the end of it in order to get the credit.
You have to pass the class.
Yeah, you have to pass the class, but you don't have to pass this other exam, right? Like the AP class, you can pass the class.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't have to pass the
Part of it, I think, to go on Anna's point is with dual enrollment and AP for that matter can look far sexier and appealing on paper than what's actually happening on the ground. And it doesn't mean it's not good. It could be phenomenal.
Right.
But we assume, based on seeing a dot,
Yeah.
or anything, that means quality. And so I want to layer this into a conversation about teaching and learning, so schools that intentionally build in dual enrollment in a way where their teachers are also somewhat connected to it, and making sure that it's not just a student can enroll, but they're going to be successful and thrive, and actually it's going to excite them about something in the future. And one other point is, one, Tammy, you crushed this. This is awesome. And I wonder if a future layer of this, because this gives language to families, right? We're giving language to families around how to think about school. And right now, it's pretty centered on courses. Which by design, it's supposed to, right? But if we were to layer in, like, some of the things that are in the narratives on schools here, that if we were to say we really value for what we envision for high schools, which could be dual enrollment or IB, how does that get captured in a dot way? Or that a school offers a culminating senior defense requirement, okay? And if we aspire for schools to do that, let's capture that and draw families' attention to that as a value. Or that a school has a 60-hour requirement for either service learning or work-based learning, or something like that. Let's draw families' attention and add to the language that they're looking at. And then they'll read the narrative, but they'll pay attention to the dots.
And the thing I wanted to say about that is families can't tell the difference between quality and quantity looking from the outside.
Right.
There's an extremely high correlation between the number of applications received by the school and the number of electives, AP courses, etc. in this little document.
Right.
I'll build off that, but I wanted to kind of ask a pivot question. But I did chat with Davina on the side about having something similar for support structures and programs, because we don't list things like SAT prep or whatever. So every time we talk about equitable access to programs and support structures, I don't even know what that practically means, which schools have what. So I totally agree that was okay. Take this as a naive question. I'm wondering, we haven't talked much, we've talked about funding, and we talked about capacity and enrollment concerns. What about the topic of merging schools while still being able to maintain the unique qualities of these? So is that a topic that you'd like to discuss? Because I it might be very sensitive, but I'd like to know why we are considering or not the possibility of merging schools. So that's just putting it out there. We don't have to get into that today.
Well, I mean, you know, the information that I'm learning today is, you know, the 300 spots, right? The 300, right? The 300 spots that we have that aren't even filled. And mathematically, that means, you know, Davina shared with me that means that in actuality, we could give everybody their number one choice. But the system is not putting everybody in their number one choice because they're trying to put people to fill the school. So I told Davina, I think that personally sounds kind of cruel, you know, like that you could have your number one choice, but you're not being given it because of the, you know what I mean, of the mathematics of trying to fill spots in all the schools. Because we know that mentally, if you don't get your number one school, you're not mentally going to be really invested in going to this other school that you got placed into that was even number 2, right, or number 3, let alone 4 or 5, right? So I'm wrapping my head around that right now, the fact that this district could, in actuality, we have enough spaces to give everybody their number one choice, but we're not.
I don't know that that's exactly true, like everybody can't go to Lincoln, but we can give a lot more people their first choice.
Yeah.
But we do not, because we are prioritizing filling all of our spots.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
All right, so here's what I want to do. In 2 minutes, we're going to pivot to public comment, and then we're going to do a quick close. Everybody has this document that you were taking notes on. I would like you to flip it over, and on the back, I would like you to write one observation or one strategy that was like the most important thing that you think came out of looking at doing this exercise, and I want you to take a picture of that and send it to me.
So repeat that.
I want you to take one. We're going to continue this conversation, but I want you to say from this conversation that we just had, the data observation or the strategy that we should pursue as a result of that data, and that I think is the most important, is X. And I want you to identify the most important thing, either in terms of a data observation or a strategy that flows from the data that you think this task force should focus on. Write it, take a picture of it, and send it to me. And while you're doing that, I'm going to invite members of the public. Anybody not sign up for, there are 4 people signed up. Did anybody not sign up who wants to give public comment? Then come on up, Frank, David, Jeff, and Annastasia. I'm going to give people about 1 more minute, and then we'll do the public comment. Text me that, and that will be data that we bring back the next time when we continue this conversation. And I just wanted to see what you all took away as most important, so Tammy and I can do some thinking offline about that. All right? And while you're doing that last task, turn your attention to folks from the public who are here to give their comment. Frank.
Do I have to go first?
You're first on the list.
Actually, the first choice of position.
No, first on the list. You have a minute.
Shoot. Yeah, but, once again, I want to say as a member of the public, we appreciate your hard work. I do want to comment once again on this diversity show Lowell. There used to be this nicely dressed lawyer who comes in every now and then claiming that Lowell's racist or that Lowell's not interested in diversity. And I'm here to rebut that and say, no, that's not true. There are many members of the Lowell community who are very interested in diversity. And here's the thing. Any member of the public can file a complaint with Department of Education, Uniform Complaint Procedure. You can go ahead and Google that. Basically, long and short of it is that because as a school, we get our funding dollars from the federal government and the state government, we are required to show the federal government that we are making the right diversity efforts for Lowell or any other school in the school district. You don't even have to be a fancy task force to go about this procedure. And there are certainly members of the Lowell community who are doing that. So, oh, there you go, yeah. So once again, I remind you, there are members of the Lowell community who are interested in diversity, and we are working in that regard, and if you're interested in working with us, reach out to me at any time. Thank you.
David? So I have to go second after Frank. In last month's task force meeting, I made public comment about the voices of the vast monolingual Chinese community not the question represented. Contract with Telcos Consulting states that Telcos is to quote, gather input from the community to understand what the needs and wants from the district's high schools. The district's middle schools are currently facing many challenges in school safety and academic outcomes. These students will rise to high school. I've been in conversations with the middle school community and how high schools can address their needs. At the same time, there are students who love math, amongst other subjects, and are first to learn. As this community of students discuss their needs in high school. Task force spent much time tonight discussing career readiness and technical education. Some of the biggest employers in the country right here in this city. If there has been no one from the extensive business community, there's no one they need from the future workforce. It's not too late to adjust various jobs and engaging the communities. Please make adjustments so that the task force can be used to be most inclusive and effective as possible. Thanks for your time. Thank you. Jeff?
I'm Jeff Lucas. I guess I want to feed off Mr. Don's comments. So we can do many things. The district has budget, $1 billion budget. Dr. Wayne's not here, but he allocates $1 billion a year. And with that $1 billion, we can do many things. We can't do everything. So some of the things that are going to be in conflict that I think Dr. Wayne would like your input on is how many schools should we have? What is the vision in a declining enrollment environment? Should we keep all these schools open? Our high schools were sized for 20,000 students. We only have 15,000 today. Average class size. What do we want our class sizes to be? Part of that's in the union contract. The union is currently negotiating with the district, but average class size is part of it. The number of teachers is part of it. How many classes should students be able to take? Should it be 6? Should it be 7? So these are some of the big strategic priorities that I think Dr. Wayne would like some input on. And in terms of international baccalaureate, we don't have it, and we don't want international baccalaureate. That would require a lot of resources to make it.
Annastasia Wong. Wanted to first address how the process of making recommendations are going to move forward. How is task force going to deal with differing opinions and how is that going to be represented? Number 2, number of AP courses. There's a lot of discussion on dual enrollment. I took both CCSS courses and AP courses at my SFUSD high school, and what I really liked about taking AP courses over dual enrollment was the presence of my classmates that really challenged me and pushed me. Lastly, I wasn't a person that took a lot of APs, so I guess from that perspective, I really valued APs over dual enrollment as it was challenging to get to CCSF and also to connect with classmates.
Thank you, Member Kelemen. Eric, process, how did we do against our norms of general
Yeah, so being engaged and present, I did mark in terms of being present or low present. Eventually it filled up, so, but I know we're missing a lot of, there's many task force members that have not been here. So I'm just calling that out, that you can't be engaged if you're not present. But in terms of engaged, for the people that were here, high level of engagement, high levels of participation. And I also noted that in terms of the take space and make space, that during the question and answer with the superintendent, a lot of participation, a lot of people were asking follow-up questions, and so people were taking space and speaking up. That vast discussion, the speak your truth and actively seek to find and learn truths of others. I noted that not only did people, I'd say the majority of voices, we didn't hear all voices during this discussion in terms of the large group. There were the small groups, which a lot of people have that space. But the discussion had both people's original comments and then building on other people's comments, which we suggest or trying to seek and hear other people's perspectives. The expect and accept non-closure. I noted that when Davina was presenting, one of the strategies that she did call out proactively, that this is something that's in progress, that's not a finished product, and sort of gave space for some non-completion that's part of the work. And then keeping equity at the center, a lot of calling out of the goals and guardrails does that explicitly. There was a lot of focus on student access to courses. And probing questions on who's accessing what.
Thank you very much. We're at time. Our next meeting is June 8th. Please keep it on your calendars. I will be reaching out to members of the task force who have not here tonight or have not been here regularly to try to attend. Please stay tuned for further follow-up related to some potential other opportunities related to seeing other schools and districts, which is something we've been talking about and trying to do outside of the meeting. Thank you very much. May the force be with you.
I have a question very quick. I'm going to hope that we don't use these pen because it makes me want to take it off and like think of sugar thing. I keep going like this going, dang, there's nothing there.
I don't even know. I guess
If I really want to do that, I think it's under my control.
Anybody want to be a superhero? Those two tables, that's how the rest of the room needs to look. Anybody wants to help?
And once it gets
class probably is like 8 girls. He's giving us, okay, so we have a 55 question final and and he like gives us an oh, I'm like, why are you giving us your own final if you have our AP final?
Yeah.
Well, good luck. Thank you.
You want me to switch sides?
Yeah, good luck.
That's fine. It's all good.